Sveta and Anatoly met for the first time in their final year at the Institute. Despite the difficulties they faced that year, they managed to build a strong and trusting relationship. After graduating from the Institute, they got married and started their life together. Recently, they celebrated their 7th wedding anniversary. While Tolia's career was rapidly developing, Sveta experienced difficulties with her superiors and the companies in which she worked. Over time, her enthusiasm to climb the corporate ladder faded, and she remained in the position of an ordinary employee with a modest salary. As a result, Tolia took on the role of the main breadwinner for their family. Even last summer, planning a vacation, Sveta and Tolia aspired to the sea. Despite the increased workload, Sveta convinced her husband that they needed a vacation and they had not gone on a trip for a long time. All year long, they had been saving money especially for this vacation, and it was their cherished dream. However, life gave them an unpleasant surprise when they realized that the prices for trips had skyrocketed, and the accumulated funds became insufficient. They thought about taking out a loan but remembered their agreement made at the beginning of the relationship, never to go into debt under any circumstances. The last hope was for the next vacation. To save up the necessary amount, Anatoly took an extra job and bought vouchers in advance to surprise his wife. Miraculously, his plan worked, and he managed to get the cherished tickets. Sveta was overjoyed, and they finally went on vacation. The hotel turned out to be delightful and the staff incredibly accommodating. They were able to relax on the first day, and the following days they explored the neighborhood and enjoyed the beach. One evening, they discussed the idea of going on an excursion. "I'll take care of that," Sveta said as she left the room. She headed to the front desk on the first floor to see what excursions were available for guests. She had already glimpsed the tinctures and booklets, but it didn't immediately occur to her to pick them up. While she was admiring the colorful pictures and occasionally seeking clarification from the receptionist, an unfamiliar man approached her. His pleasant, deep voice said, "I highly recommend this boat trip." Mesmerized, Sveta looked up at him. "Have you been?" she asked, surprised at her own interest, not so much in the excursion itself, but in this intriguing stranger. At that moment, the receptionist's phone rang and he had to be excused to make an urgent call. A conversation ensued between the two. The man introduced himself as Victor and said that he had been on vacation for about a week and had already had time to look around. However, he added with a smile he wouldn't mind repeating the experience with such a beautiful companion. To Sveta's surprise, the flirtation on the part of such an attractive man delighted her, and she decided not to reveal her marital status. After talking for a few more minutes and receiving a promotional brochure, the woman apologized to her new acquaintance and said she had to leave. When she returned to the room, her husband inquired where she had been for so long. Sveta lied, saying she had been waiting for the receptionist without saying a word. A few days later, late in the evening, the spouses were walking along the seashore. The temperature dropped and Sveta wrapped herself in a sweater. "Come on, let's remember our youth, it will be fun," suggested Tolia and began to undress. Sveta looked at her husband disapprovingly. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Let's go for a swim and remember our first summer when we bathed under the moon," her husband suggested, already standing knee-deep in the water and holding out his hand to her, inviting her to join him. Shivering from the cold, Sveta insisted that it was better to stay on the shore to avoid getting sick. As her husband continued to frolic in the water, inviting her to join him, she managed only a strained smile, but her thoughts were occupied with something else: Victor and the way he had looked at her during their first meeting. She saw him a few more times during breakfast. He was sitting at table number 1, but there was no hint of disappointment on his face when he saw Sveta with her husband. He kept smiling and couldn't take his eyes off her. As fate would have it, the very next morning Sveta's words came true. Her husband was ill. He decided that it would be better to rest in his room for a few days, and Sveta, taking advantage of the opportunity, began to actively persuade him to stay away so as not to get infected. "Go to the sea. Here you'll breathe in my bacteria," her husband said between coughing fits. Although Sveta felt sorry for her husband because he would be sick during what seemed to be a well-deserved vacation, she saw it as a chance to continue her interest in her neighbor. Immersed in these thoughts, Sveta happened to meet Victor on the first floor, as if he was already waiting for her. After exchanging greetings, there was a slight pause, as if both were waiting to see what to do next. Sveta looked up at him. "You know what, let's go out. I have a lot of free time right now," she suggested, and Victor smiled back. He rented a car and drove Svetlana around the beautiful places nearby all day. They even had lunch at an expensive restaurant, where Victor didn't hesitate to hold her hand while she waited for her food. Although Sveta felt awkward, she couldn't deny that she was beginning to find this game enjoyable. When evening came and the sun cast a warm glow on the sea and the surrounding houses, Victor stopped the car near a cliff with a magnificent view. They got out of the car and stood by the hood, admiring the sunset. There was no one around. Imperceptibly, Victor put his arm around Svetlana's waist and gently turned her toward him. "I've been dreaming of this moment since the first day I saw you," he admitted with a soft smile. Slightly intrigued, Sveta leaned into him, wanting to hear more. Deep down, she knew he wanted to kiss her. It frightened her, but at the same time, she couldn't deny herself the growing desire to fall into Victor's arms. She was drawn to him like a magnet. He moved gently toward her. His eyes lingered on her lips with hunger. Though she had ample opportunity to push him away, she was drawn to him like a magnet. Their passionate kiss led to him boldly tugging up her dress. By now, Sveta had given herself to the moment both physically and mentally. In the evening, she returned to her husband's room as if nothing had happened. "How was the tour with Nevesha?" her husband inquired with a smile. "Good, I enjoyed it," replied the wife, remembering the true nature of the excursion. "I feel better already, thanks to the pills. Next trips we will be together," announced the husband, hugging her lovingly. While Sveta outwardly accepted this news, in her mind she was already figuring out how she and Victor would spend time alone together. Their secret affair continued, and Sveta planned to visit him at night while her husband slept peacefully. Although they tried to be discreet, they were eventually caught by an unexpected witness. During one of these meetings, a neighbor named Georgie saw Sveta knocking gently on the door, and Victor abruptly slammed it shut in his face. Georgie, thinking they were vacationing together, saw them at the pool the next day, trying to hide behind an umbrella and then going in different directions after a secret kiss. The neighbor noticed a cell phone left on the chaise lounge next to the couple, but it was too late to contact the owners. They had already left. Deciding to return the phone, he headed toward the pool. Unfortunately, he couldn't remember the couple's room number. Exhausted from the night, he hadn't paid attention to the room nameplate. Not knowing them personally, he was able to describe the woman. After consulting with the receptionist, he recognized the room number and went to the right door, where he was met with surprise by a very different man from the one he had seen with Svetlana. The woman, like her de facto spouse, seemed equally surprised at his unexpected appearance. Jokingly acknowledging her forgetfulness, she thanked Georgie for returning the phone and quickly closed the door. It dawned on Georgie that she was spending time with one partner at night and another during the day, reflecting his recent nasty breakup with a woman who was also seeing others behind his back. This story of temporary roommates in a hotel room occupied his thoughts more than he expected. Eventually, over breakfast was when he told Victor what he had witnessed. Georgie returned to his table, leaving it up to his husband to decide. Victor was uncomfortable at the thought of Sveta's infidelity, especially after the rumors from the neighbors had reached him. He followed Georgie's advice by setting his alarm clock. But that night he was unable to sleep because Sveta's constant questions fueled his suspicions. She was nervous, hinting at possible plans for the night. Anatoly pretended to fall asleep when Sveta left the room, and as a result, he learned of her secret rendezvous. He organized an unforgettable confrontation, after which the lover walked around in sunglasses for days. Their vacation ended with Sveta facing the consequences of her actions and unable to save her marriage, as Anatoly quickly filed for divorce upon their return. Sveta tried unsuccessfully to reconcile with her lover and was left to pick up the pieces of her life alone.